To reiterate my partner's claim that the United States should increase its military commitment to removing the Assad government for power, first we want to help because Syrian civilians are in need of help. The Syrian government, which is currently led by President Bashar al-Assad, responded to protests which were incited by Syrian civilians spray painting artwork and graffiti on the walls, and that's how the conflict started. It killed hundreds of demonstrators and peaceful protesters and imprisoned many more. Even when we tried to help, hundreds of people were killed in August of 2013 after rockets were filled with the nerve agent sarin were fired at several suburbs of Damascus. Western powers said that it could have only been carried out by Syria's government, but the government is blaming rebel forces. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons has continued to document the use of toxic chemicals in their conflict. Currently, more than 11 million Syrians, which is, I believe, half of their pre-Civil War population, have been displaced from their homes as forces that are loyal to President Bashar al-Assad are battling each other. Next, as to why Bashar al-Assad's leadership is causing direct harm to Syrian civilians, he's currently falsely painting himself as a supposed protector of Syria's minorities, and he's currently exploiting this narrative to maintain support, but that's not actually the case. Currently, according to Zoe Hugh, the poor and the rural people are being cut off, and their standards of living are collapsing. And we can see the results of this because when the uprising started in 2011, it began in the rural areas which had originally been shunned to the side. Now, although President Bashar al-Assad has had popular ratings because of his reform, that period of reform was short because he cracked down again the following year in 2014. And he's unfit to rule Syrian people. If most of you don't know this, his father ruled Syria for a very long time, and it was actually his older brother that was geared and groomed to take over. But his brother died in a car crash, which is what handed the throne to Bashar. But he was actually in London studying to be an eye doctor, and he had never had any experience with military or with politics. He also fails to take responsibility for the atrocities that are occurring under his regime. He portrays the Syrian civil war as, that his country is just a faultless victim of domestic terrorism, and remains vague about what he can or cannot do to fix it. He simply says that mistakes have been made in certain places and refuses to give a direct statement about what he can and can't do to help. He's also a war criminal. The UN Security Council has demanded that all parties end the indiscriminate use of weapons in populated areas, but civilians continue to die in the thousands. Many have been killed by barrel bombs, which have been dropped by government aircrafts on gatherings in rebel-held areas. And only after facing the prospect of U.S. Military intervention in August 2013 under the Obama administration did President Assad agree to completely remove all destruction of Syria's chemical weapons. So we can see here that we do have an effect on them. We do, when we say, hey, do this, or we'll help you, or do this, or we'll cut off aid, they do tend to listen. However, they're listening since Obama failed to follow up on that, even after Assad kept tear gassing his people and stuff. Once again, the OPCW found chlorine was used systematically and repeatedly in deadly attacks on rebel areas in 2014. Now, in a response to Ryan's claim that we are already providing aid and that that's enough, according to Lucy Rogers of BBC News, a UN Commission of Inquiry has evidence that parties on both sides of the conflict have committed war crimes, which more specifically to Ryan's claim, including murder, torture, rape, and enforced disappearances. They've been accused of using civilian suffering, which actually blocks our aid, to access food which actually blocks our aid of food, water, and health through, they use it as a method of war. So our aid isn't actually able to reach the Syrian people currently. And the longer that we wait to intervene, the worse things become in Syria. If we remain completely indifferent, it may lead to another massacre or even genocide, much like the Rwandan genocide. According to History.com, if the U.S. decides to not intervene, they will later regret it the way other superpowers did when they did not help to stop the Rwandan genocide. The U.S. should intervene sooner rather than later before it is too late to help. And in response to Ryan's claim that if we provide military aid, they will fall to rebel forces, without U.S. intervention, Syrian civilians are already falling victim to our enemies. Our refusal to directly help is causing Syrian civilians to join extremist forces, which will only continue to make the situation in Syria worse. And according to Lucy Rogers at BBC News, their disappointment at our inaction is causing a fertile recruital ground for these extremists. And extremists are convincing those who have lost their loved ones that their only hope for change or like a ceasefire is to join up with rebel force. I mean, extremists, sorry, excuse me. Thank you.